So doubt. Doubt is an interesting subject because there's a couple different ways to look at doubt. I would start off by saying there's an emotional doubt and there's a decision-making doubt. I may doubt something about my relationship with my wife, but that emotion and the emotions that are involved with that don't necessarily need to make my choice. So the reality is as a Christian, we have to be very aware of the fact that our emotions will pull us or compel us to do things that are wrong. The Bible says flesh, right? And so don't be driven by your flesh. Don't be driven by your emotions, and don't be driven by your doubts. The reality is Jesus said to Thomas, he said, Thomas, blessed are you who have seen the scars in my hands, right? And in my wounds. But he says, even more blessed are those who have not seen yet still believe. And I think it's a decision. And that's really what I would hone in on first is you might have all sorts of emotions. You might have all sorts of fears about placing your faith in God. But at the end of the day, despite those emotions, you have to choose to follow. And that can be kind of the case with anything. You have to choose to worship, even though you may not feel like it. But when it comes to doubt, the reality is that everybody has doubts. It's the do we act on it? Do we act out on those doubts? I know for me, one thing that I have found to be so interesting is that I had all sorts of doubts when I was a new believer. And I have questions now still for the Lord, but I've learned not to let those doubts drive me. Instead, I kind of have like a systematic reasoning, and it's not anything complicated, but I just go through very basic steps to remind myself and find reassurance that what I'm believing has legitimacy. Let me explain. This is just the way I do it. Okay, I come from a construction background and I like to understand how things work. So I always go back to step number one. God is clearly seen from the universe. So when I have doubts in regards to, is God there? Is God listening? I go back to the fact that number one, the general revelation of God, the universe that we live in, is literally like this paradox situation that we live in the box that God has created. But in order for the box to exist in the first place, every law had to have been broken for us to be here today. Literally, each day that you and I live is a miracle, according to physics. So if you start on the foundation of God is clearly seen, and remind yourself in a way that you'll remember God is clearly seen, and then you have the specific revelation of God, which is Jesus. The Hebrews chapter 1 says, long ago, God revealed himself and spoke through the prophets. But in these latter days, he's spoken to us through his son, Jesus Christ. And so if we just remind ourselves, yes, God is clearly seen, and it's not superstition. This is legitimate. God is clearly seen. And then add that with the specific teachings of Jesus Christ, his teachings make too much sense. So for me, I'm reassured by those two things, and I'll remind myself of different biblical truths. This is another really big thing with doubt, is the more you memorize the truth, when a lie or a doubt comes in, you squash it out right away. And the quicker you squash it out, the less it grows within you. And so doing this regularly is so helpful. Because I've found myself not struggling with many of the things I used to struggle with early in my faith. But not that struggling ends, because you have different questions. You have different areas of growth. You never arrive per se. But that's what I would say in regards to doubt. Don't quit pursuing God. Don't quit pursuing truth. He will reveal himself. He makes that promise in his word. If you seek him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, he will reveal himself.